Oh, I see. I think I'm here. I'm peaking a little bit on OBS. I'm going to turn me down a little bit. There you go. Oh, there we go. Howdy, folks. I'm Cody with To Walk with Giants, joined by the ever incredible co-host of this strange endeavor.
Yes, Christopher Messick, aka Laguna Munta. How's it going, everybody?
All right, it looks like the level's good. I'm just really loud compared to you. I think it's doing the. We had some audio things going with how we also record some stuff that was unexpected, so there's going to be a little bit of bugs there. I hope you folks will bear with us. But
Technical difficulties as per usual.
as per usual, eventually there'll be less. Um, anyway, uh, thank you all for joining us. We're talking about something that everybody's got, and you know what that is? That's opinions. Um,
Indeed.
so, I guess we can hop right into it. Did you have an
Yeah.
opinion on opinions?
Well, yeah. It's a really that's a broad topic, and that's an interesting one to tackle. It's very meta,
Yeah,
uh, and I think that was the intention of the suggester.
I think so.
Uh, just knowing his style. So, well, one of the first thoughts that I wrote down about opinions is, again, I'm approaching this from an artist's perspective. So, if I was looking for opinions on my art or my music, this is the mindset I'm approaching it from. Opinions can be fine tools that can help to better shape an idea and refine it into a beautiful sculpture. They can also act as wrecking balls and destroy an idea entirely. This is where timing of opinions is important. Um, I think that getting an opinion on a project too early or on a piece of art too early can be a huge detriment to the art and to your um, what's the word, morale with that art. So I think opinions can be valuable in helping you craft something, but who you get them from and when you get them and what you're looking for when you ask, these are all important factors.
Oh,
What do you think, Cody?
I completely disagree. That's my opinion. No. I think so. Opinions are what they're kind of the flavor you're left with after experience, right? It's or
Hmm.
and even then experience, right? Like I guess when your exposure to something is probably a better way to put that, because the experience can then change an opinion very quickly if it's an actual experience. So it's that first initial, you know, toe in the water, right? Um, that's when I think the opinion begins to form, and then how open you are and all those different things can always alter that in the experience of it. And so, if we focus purely on art, right, we have our own personal, you know, dislikes and likes, preferences, and those always grow and change. I've certainly seen that. I've had some very strong opinions, but those are usually flavored by, again, experience, actually going through something, and kind of usually within a pattern, so it's happened more than once as well. Um, and then you have the other experience with opinions when you are particularly in art, when you're dealing with other people's opinions, and that's a whole nother bag of worms there. But I don't know. You know, I for me, opinions are, it's just one of those other bits that we have to learn to navigate, both, you know, again, dealing with other folks' opinions, but our own as well.
Yeah.
And they only exist again with that initial exposure, and that's just kind of where I'm landing on it at the moment.
Right. Yeah. And the way I approached this thought was others' opinions, not so much my opinions. That's the way I thought of it because being an artist and producing a product, you know, your concern at some point is going to land on other people's opinions and how they react to your work and what they say about it, how that makes you feel, how you allow that or don't allow that to influence you. So this is another thought I've had pertaining to this is I in the past when I was younger and I was writing music, when I was like 16, I think 16 or so, when we recorded our demo in high school.
Mhm.
And I remember, and I may have talked about this before, but at that age when you're doing something artistic and you're pursuing an endeavor like that that's very personal, you have to believe you're better than you are, and you have to kind of get this cockiness going to get you there, to fuel you. And what better age than 16 to be that guy, to be that cocky, pushy guy with his music. So I remember my mom and I were visiting a friend of hers out of town, and he had listened to the CD. And so this is a
Ah.
cautionary tale. Don't
Oh.
ask people's opinions unless you really want them. Don't ask people's opinions just so you can hear them praise you. You know, don't go in there looking for praise. So this guy had listened to the CD, and here I am, cocky guy, like this is the bomb. This CD's epic, that sort of thing. I Hey, what do you think of the CD? And he goes, "It's okay." And I went, "Okay." And he goes, "Yeah, it was okay." And so
Ah.
I moved on from the subject, embarrassed and maybe a bit bruised. But I learned something valuable from that, and that's just, yeah, it's just don't ask people just to hear praise. If you want an opinion from somebody, maybe ask specific questions. If you have a concern about maybe a piece that, a piece of the art that you don't like or that you maybe aren't sure of, maybe ask more specific questions when you're talking to people and try to get actual specific feedback. That's something I learned from that encounter.
So my opinion on that encounter, which is kind of funny,
And I
is
don't know if you're still there, Cody, but I think I lost you. I think I
I'm here
lost your
on
audio.
OBS. Let me check.
Well,
Oh, what
I
the
think we
hell?
lost Cody.
Other way
Well, if
around.
Cody has truly fallen off, is this is what I've
Weird.
been intending to happen. This is just my show now. Ah, he's back.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. StreamYard like decided that my stuff wasn't connected anymore. That was weird as hell. So, just future knowledge, they can still hear me because I'm
Ah,
going through
okay.
OBS. It was just my. So we've this is a Frankenstein of a stream, folks, with its moving parts, and that's why it's those technical difficulties can happen. But yeah, I'm here. My opinion on that very fascinating story was that he was being far more gentle as well. Um, People don't usually use neutral opinions honestly. So an
Break that
okay
down.
so an okay is, maybe there's some honesty to that, but it's likely like the thought was more like, well, I don't want to really hurt this kid, but I also don't want to lie
Right.
to
Right.
him.
I don't think he liked it very much,
That's
and that was him being nice about it.
Yes, and so that wasn't
Yeah.
really an honest opinion, but it was an opinion, and it was the way that this individual wished to, express that, and
Right.
that's again, that's a nice way to do it. But that's also in my experience. Again, we're talking about art. My experience on my books, those neutral opinions are the worst because I can't learn anything from them. It's the worst damn things. Like, well, I'm in the same position I was before you received the art and gave me feedback, and so the wasted everybody's time. But so I prefer negative critique. I prefer hearing a
Right.
some kind of strong, honest, in particular. I don't want a dishonest, strong opinion, positive
Right.
or negative. That's worse than neutral, honestly.
Yeah. You want something genuine.
Just genuine, either direction, because art's continuously growing, and you have to be able to adapt to it, and so that's honestly that's been more disheartening in my endeavors is when I do not receive feedback than when I do, and even if it's negative, and there has been negative, and I've been able to learn from it.
Yeah, and that's something. I've learned to be better about as I've grown more mature is to
Mature.
be willing to accept negative feedback or constructive criticism, whatever you want to call it, because that's really the way to get better at something, and that's really the way to evolve your craft, and that's really the way to grow in your field,
And
is being able to and not get upset about it, not take it personally, you
that's the
know?
big one. Because yeah, you're gonna stagnate if you do.
Right.
You do nothing there. Um, the So I have a quote for Ricky Gervais here, and it's not directly on art, but it is on opinions. So it says, and it could be applied to it. Again, we were talking about disingenuous critique or a disingenuous opinion on it. So it could apply to that. Opinions don't affect facts, but facts should affect opinions and do if you're rational. So it's the willingness to not have rigid opinions, I think, is what he's addressing there. And I find that extremely helpful. I find folks whose opinions on things that are less stagnant, most most things in life are not stagnant, to
Right.
be
Life's a river, not a pond.
exactly. And so if you're not willing to flow and grow and be presented with new information and change your opinions, your thoughts, your actions to now affect your new reality after that moment. Using the term new reality is a little massive, but for me that's every moment's a new reality. It's a new
Oh,
experience, a new growth.
I
But yeah,
I
go.
have a story. I have a
Oh,
story
good.
pertaining to that new reality.
Oh, cool, 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 cool.
This was an interesting experience I had the other day at work. I had taken a break and I'd locked the door, and I forgot to unlock the door after my break. So I'm sitting there and I hear the handle jiggle and I'm like, what's and I look over and there's a dude with an armful of stuff and he's walking away and I look and I'm like, oh, the door's locked. So I went and unlocked it and I opened the door and I flagged him down. I was like, hey man, come on in. And he was this Navajo guy and he said he was from Gallup
Okay.
and he had this armful of uh they were like boards and they were wrapped in newspaper, and he broke them out, and they were traditional Navajo sand paintings that he had done. And I started talking to him and looking at these pieces, and they were really beautiful. And he was clearly talented at his craft. And we were just talking, and he was telling me stories about his grandma, and I was asking him questions about the meaning of these specific images and what, why this, what does that mean, that sort of thing. And he was really soft spoken, and he had a great accent, and he was just a pleasure to speak with. And there was two pieces that he had that were small pieces, and he was selling those for 20 bucks a piece. And I they were beautiful, and I thought that was a good deal. So I was kind of eyeballing those, and they were images of an arrowhead, an outline kind of a in the background, and inside the arrowhead is an eagle feather, and there are kind of like rainbow colors in the sides and in the feathers of the or in the feathers. And anyway, I was looking at a couple of those and I was considering getting one for my friend, and I started looking at the one of them had a black arrowhead, one of them had a brown arrowhead. And I liked the black arrowhead. That was my kind of instinct, but I thought, "Oh, my friend will prefer the brown arrowhead." So I said to the guy, "Hey, I will take this one." And I indicated the brown one and I gave him 20 bucks. And we kept talking and he picked up the black one because he was talking about how he made it and what he uses for supplies and this sort of thing. And he goes, "Oh, and these things are really durable and they'll last." And he grabs and he smacks it like 3 times and then it just breaks and a bunch of pieces go flying all over the shop and just he basically just destroyed this image,
Uh-huh.
and he laughed about
Uh-huh.
he did this, and he like immediately he was like clocking it in his head. He goes, "Oh, I think I forgot to do this with that one. I think I didn't let it sit long enough." Um, but what I thought of in that moment, in that split second, I and this has to do with this new reality idea. This is what I'm getting to. In that split second where it was broken, I thought, well, that was the one I had considered getting. And then I had chosen another. And I had this thought. I said, well, when one choice is made, the other is destroyed.
Yes.
And that was the epiphany I had in that moment when this guy destroyed his art in front of me after I bought the other piece. Uh,
No,
and
I find that interesting too because they were very similar images, right?
yeah,
So that's the bit too. So from oh, I don't know. So I look at art very spiritually, and I think you do as well, particularly with music, right? So, but
definitely.
this is a from an image bit. So he did these two images, and there was one with color, and there was one that was darker and had the black, right? It was more striking, probably because of the contrast between them. It's just funny. He had
Right.
already made the sale, and then he broke it. That's great.
Yeah.
Tried to sell the other one, I think is what it was, and then in that moment, that piece of art that was very similar to the other one was like, nope, it doesn't need to exist anymore. It's done. It was just there for that opinion, that choice, and then it was gone, right? That new reality. And
Yeah.
I just find that I find a lot of experiences like that within art, whether working with other artists or within my own things, and just the experience of that is
Right.
I find that happens pretty consistently. If somebody's active in their art, it's not how do I say that? If a piece of your soul is truly in that art, I guess is the closest to it I can put together.
Yeah, and so I thought it's interesting that, well, if on the topic, my opinion of which art was preferable dictated which one got destroyed.
Right. That's the interesting thing.
And I went against my opinion, my instinct. I went for the one I thought someone else would like. Turns out I was right.
Mhm.
But yeah, that was fun and an interesting experience
No, that's a fun story
with
indeed.
another artist.
Well, let me see here. These are all kind of eh. I do have two other quotes, but I'm gonna hold off on them and see if they become relevant. Um,
Right. Well, let's I was
yeah.
going to ask you a question.
Oh.
Well, cuz I remember when you were initially writing the roughs and when you were scripting Jack Irons.
Oh.
I remember you giving Dean and I copies and you were asking us what we thought, and when like we sent you feedback on these sorts of things. Um So, in your experience with writing comics and getting input, how much has outside input affected your work? And if it has affected it, how positive has the effect or negative has the effect been?
Oh, that's great. So I actually have addressed this many times on different podcasts in different ways, but it's the same kind of concept. Um, the initial. Oh, come on, kids. The initial. So back then, those roughs, particularly like my first one, the opinions on those works too. You were talking about that CD, right? I'm sure you look back at it differently than the cocky 16-year-old did, right?
Oh,
So
I do.
so I'm just gonna start there. I have the same thing with my original scripts. And you'll find a lot of okay. So I gotta just figure out how I want to structure this. I'll start it
No worries.
with the same thing that we did as musicians. Is we and I've heard this is what basically any musician and artists do in general, in my experience from what I've seen from other folks, is you when you're starting out, you take from your influences, sometimes very strongly, right? Hey, come on now. It can become quite derivative, and that was my first go on those scripts was exceedingly derivative. Here's a bunch of cool stuff that I want to interact together that isn't yet. That I haven't seen anywhere else, right? So I'll pull from Wolverine, I'll pull from Ghost Rider, I'll pull from Warhammer 40K. I'll pull all these things together and throw them into a pot, and it's going to be the coolest thing ever.
Right.
And it was for me at that time. But as I actually went to do it, and as I had lived life and I experienced things, I found when I went back to those things that it wasn't a piece of art that I wished to push forward. It was a great step. It was a wonderful first set of brush strokes, if you want to say it that way, a first couple notes, that kind of deal. But it was
Yeah.
not the actual piece. It wasn't what it was there. It was just the free ignition point, right? So getting feedback on that again was good. It was again allowed me to let it go easier and actually find what I wanted to. So I say that was very
Right.
good.
And especially going into, sorry to interrupt you,
No, no, no.
especially because your gig is so collaborative.
And so at
You
that
kind
point too, right? That was just me. It was just me writing comic scripts. I actually had
exactly, but
no
what was
real
to
intent.
come?
Yeah, exactly. So my at that point I was just writing comic scripts. I had written, plays, other things that were gave me a structure, another foundation, was a stepping stone even before that stepping stone. But going from that bit and then looking back and changing my opinion on that piece, from feedback and just from living life and understanding myself better just over a couple years, being able to grow and accept these different things and be like, well, is this the voice I actually wish to put out? There's fun stuff, and
Right.
there's a lot from those I actually kept. Like, there was a lot of little pieces that were like good. They were things that I could hold
Oh
on to. They
yeah.
were positive opinions that, they were things that actually could. But the structure itself and all of that, I had read more comics. Like, it was exposure and experience that allowed me to change my
Right.
opinion and grow. And so I've kept an open mind through that, and my interactions, particularly with readers on the collaborative bits. So I guess the next really important stepping stone was those scripts, which had been reworked, and finding an artist, right? And him looking at this script and being like, oh, this is neat. I kind of like this character, and I like the idea that you've got. And I didn't just go with the scripts. I came with like my initial sketches and all that stuff, just because I had to
Right.
get this out. And so he's like, oh, okay, I kind of get what he's doing here. And he probably needed some money. I think it was the combination of both, and the fact that he thought he could work with me. And even though there
Right.
was a slight language barrier, we were able to kind of feel each other out. And he got a still very, since it has been rectified, and he makes a quite good page rate, but that initial one might as well have been a gift from how hard the work is, no
Well,
question.
it was a
um,
gift because he was a kind of a gift to you. The fact that he showed up in town, and you know, that
and
was a
those kind
gift.
of things, yeah, absolutely. Like, nobody meets their artist like I did.
Right.
Nonetheless, yeah, through Craigslist at a McDonald's. But
I love it.
anyway, yeah, and a guy who's from another country. It's just weird. But anyway,
Yeah.
and even so, in indie comics, just being able to actually physically meet your artist is a weird thing. Like, that's very rare. Actually, most are collaborative, sometimes coast to coast, or
Right.
again country to country. But anyway, um, his opinions on that, and then what he did with it, and my understanding of this connection, and my enjoyment of what he was doing, and his piece of it, how he was changing it, my opinion on that being good. Like, if he was a shitty artist and we had all these good things going, but I didn't like his art, like, yeah, it wouldn't have went
Yeah.
anywhere. But I did, and I understood what he was doing, and I was like, okay, so I had to be open to that to allow the thing to actually exist.
Right.
So being open to those bits, and um, the other bit too that's been foundational in that collaboration has been, like, basically, accepting and honestly always enjoying his changes, which would be his implementation of his opinion and thoughts, and through an artist's eye on my scripts, right? so
Right.
so there has been rather significant ones, and I'm happy for them, because that is his skill set. That's what he's worked on. It's not what I've worked on. It's not my skill
Yeah.
set.
Yeah. You gotta kind of listen to people who have that experience.
Oh yeah,
Like, kind of
absolutely.
put your ego aside and
Well, it'd be like you trying to tell a trumpet player, exactly what to play and how to play it, right, in
right.
your piece. Yeah, like, you can have an idea of what you want it to sound
I
like.
could see myself doing that
Well,
at a time. At a time.
yeah, well, that's a bit, but like, you can understand like what the trumpet's role is supposed to be and what you have
Right.
frameworked, but it's still going to be that player doing it, right? You
For
don't
sure.
you're not
Yeah.
going to be playing
Exactly.
that, and so if
Right.
you
Well, it's just kind of like with the when we were working together, and especially recently, when we were playing my music and you're doing stuff different than I had intended, and I was like, "Oh, I just noticed you're playing that differently," and you said, "Yeah, I think this sounds better," and I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. Well, then we'll just do it that way," because it wasn't a hindrance, it didn't get in the way, and also if it was like it was more comfortable, it flowed more freely for you, and it complemented the music as well. And those kind of things I've gotten better at being flexible about. And well, especially since I'm reaching out to people to collaborate on things, I have to be flexible. If I wasn't, to just be a
I've
nightmare for everybody.
That's the bit, and I've met many folks within the comics community, but you know, you've heard nightmares from musicians too, particularly once they've already hit like a peak and it's their shit.
Right.
Usually they've earned it, to be fair, so they know what they want to make.
Yeah, at
To
that
be fair,
point, they have the knowledge, and they know what works, and they're
yes.
just they want it their way, and obviously their way works. So
Yep,
do it.
yep, and that's the bit too. Again, if you're working on a mainstream IP like Spider-Man or whatever, you're not going to take it that far. Marvel's opinion is going to be the top opinion.
Right.
Right, and
Right.
so the difference between a hired gun and an independent artist as well, like they're the vast array of needing to integrate your opinion. But throughout my journey within comics, I've been starved for people's honest opinions. Again, I kind of we brought that up, but I found them, if my opinion of their opinion doesn't
Right.
align, then that's fine. I could cast it aside. Nothing's changed. But I had that data to work off of, and I've found
Right.
great bits of data, and that outside eye is so important because you become so close to your work.
Oh
Even
yeah.
within a collaborative bit, you know, I've had issues. One's like book go through the first creation bit. It went through, God, it went through my editing, right? My writing editing. It went through another editor. It went through the publisher. It went through the letterer. It went through the colorist, and it went through some beta readers, and we still got typos.
I
Like
know. Isn't that funny?
it's just it gets so close, like that, even with that much of a outside eyes, or it's not even that far
Right.
outside, it still happens. Those cracks will still make it through, and
Mhm.
maybe even after it's released and out, you didn't notice it, and then somebody's like, "Hey, did you notice this?" And it's like, "Oh, thanks." And that was sort of like, great.
I remember that. I remember an instance where we were like, and I was like, "Did you?" And you're like, "Yeah, I know. Everybody missed it."
I just thought it was crazy that level, because we had sieved it, through a bunch of different folks, and it just,
Right.
people had read it, and particularly the one I'm talking about was on page one, right? So people go through page one and then they've had forgotten it already, would be my guess, is why.
Oh
Even
no.
if they had logged it, they had already forgotten and it was like, I think it was like a there kind of situation or something like that. It wasn't a
Sure.
crazy, like, noticeable, like, break, which I have found even in mainstream comics. You will find
Oh yeah.
typos and all
Oh
these
yeah.
things, and they go through similar. When you're putting out 80 books a month, when you're Marvel or whatever, it's I'm assuming pretty easy when you maybe have like 5 editors for that stuff to happen, right? The demand's a little
Right.
different, but nonetheless, it does, but even when they're supposed to be a top professional quality, what have you, it's going to happen. That's just art. Um, but being able to get those opinions later, even if it's continuously missed, and all these different, my issue too, in particular, it hit folks in different ways. It was a great departure from one's pacing. It was longer. The storytelling, the framing device and the framework of it was the same, but what it was approaching and trying to put forward, some people found it too much. The strongest opinion I've got on that was, this reads like a role playing source book, right? Like, this
Oh
is just a
yeah.
lot of data and lore. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was its point, and I liked that, so I could get the fudge out of the way, and people got the vibe in issue 2, and then I don't have to hit it as hard. And
Right.
you can skip issue 2, honestly.
And
I try to
that
do
and
that
that.
with each of the books, is you can read them by themselves. but
Oh
but
okay.
but the that opinion stuck with me. I was like, well, I could have my cake and eat it too. I could still have this flavor and this device without making it feel to some as, and I think that would be as dragging, right? I That's kind of how I took it, is that the pacing was far weaker than it could have been. And I've worked hard to integrate that. And I think we've succeeded in doing that while maintaining what issue two's goal was. And had that person not taken that time to do a wonderful video critique on it and let that know how they felt and what they all the different angles, um, I would not have started thinking that way.
Right.
Um, and it was a wonderful stepping stone to understanding, like, okay, well then how does the what I like to read, how do they handle these things? That made me step
Hmm.
back and think of, when I'm looking at these things and reading them and enjoying them, like, how are they succeeding in getting that? Which any artist should be doing that within their own medium, honestly. But as you're growing, there are things you learn to do that you might not have done at the beginning. It's going to be different for all kinds of folks.
Right.
And that's for music, that's for it's all mediums. And again, that was an honest critique. Had it come off as dishonest, then yeah, I would have discarded it and carried on. And that's having a good barometer on others' opinions is very important. I think that was one of the first things you were kind of talking about. Is
Yeah.
being able to understand that. I think that is unbelievably important, to be able to understand disingenuous opinions from genuine, and being able to either discard it or utilize it.
Well, and this is the thing too. There could be a hint of truth in a disingenuous opinion as well.
Yep, that's
So it's I think it's a matter of not taking it to heart and letting it hurt you, but looking at it and thinking about it and considering it. I remember years ago, there was a friend of ours, my sister was showing him music of mine, and he was just saying that it wasn't like relatable. He couldn't connect with the songs and the subject matter in them. It just wasn't connecting. And this was at a time when I wasn't writing songs that were so personally informed. They were just stories essentially. It was novels in songs. You know what I mean?
yeah. You're writing more power metal than
Yeah, just
yeah.
stuff that just cool stories,
Yes.
campfire stories, stuff that sounded cool and that was interesting from that perspective. And around that same time, I started listening to Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. I had seen The Wall when I was a kid a few times, and I was always a fan of it. But I bought Dark Side of the Moon and The Wall, and I started listening to those a lot. And that was a big shift for me. That coupled with this opinion that, well, I should probably try to write songs that are about real things also. It doesn't mean I have to abandon what I've done before and never walk that road again, but maybe just try to do something different, think about things differently, and attack it from a different angle. And I started doing that almost instantaneously, and I got better at it as I went. The first few songs that I wrote that came from that place were a little bit heavy-handed, which I don't like to be. I like to be metaphorical, and I like to make my songs interesting, and I like for the layers to be peeled back slowly and give people the chance to decipher it. That's just how I like to write, and that's what I enjoy to listen. That's what I enjoy listening to and watching, as far as when it comes to movies and music also. But if it wasn't for that opinion, um, and and the influences of others, I may not have gotten there as quickly or at all. So again, it may have come from a place that was just he may have just been attacking it. Maybe he was genuine about it. I don't really know. I heard it secondhand, but I thought about it and I analyzed it and I got something out of it. But I thought that I want to share about that aspect of creativity and other people's opinions, and I feel you will agree with me, is that, well, at the end of the day, when you're writing a comic book or I'm writing music, it's our desires that need to be fulfilled. So I can admit when there's something wrong in a song and that maybe it should be changed, or if somebody says something about a song and I say, well, I like it and that's how I want it to be, so I'm going to keep it, because ultimately it's about satisfying myself and conveying the message that I want to convey and having the peace that I want to have. And other opinions can help shape that into something greater than you might have come up with on your own, or they could be detrimental. and filtering those is very difficult. But I think at the end of the day, learning to trust your instincts and learning to trust yourself and your own opinions and your own decisions is really key.
Oh, absolutely. So, kind of on this line, one of the quotes did come up. So, this is from Thomas Jefferson. Difference
Mm,
of opinion leads to inquiry, and inquiry to the truth. And so that's the bit. It's kind of what we were talking about, is that if we weren't open to rethinking that opinion that we originally had, that, oh, this is great, or what have you, we wouldn't have
right.
found that stronger truth of the matter and be able to develop the art itself.
Yeah, because then you're living in your own fantasy. You know, oh, I'm the 16-year-old. I'm badass. This CD is so good. And if you don't listen to other people, or at least, engage with that disagreement in a realistic way, not just blow it off and go on convinced that, I mean, that might be useful too, but you might not get to that truth that really that you're possibly not getting to in your own fantasy,
And that's the big one. And
your
those,
own
again, those
grandeur,
fantasies are super important. And
of
as
course.
you said, the I think all of the pieces, all those steps along that journey, being able to carry the bits of truth that you did find alongside that bit, right? Because most of those endeavors do find pieces and baubles and just little bits that were really good, but maybe basically everything else of it was terrible. Um, yeah,
Right.
like my original scripts, there was bits there that I really like. The structure, the soul, and even the swagger I wanted to do in the original bit. I was like, no, this is good. This is what I wanted out of it. I just needed more time and experience to be able to actually express it, and that is a
Yeah.
continuously never-ending journey of
I've heard
refinement.
uh I've heard Paul Stanley talk about that. He was talking about when he wrote the God of Thunder guitar riff. It wasn't the riff that he had thought of, but it was the riff he could play to the best of his abilities, in once he actually tried to apply it to the guitar.
And that's exact. So yeah, he had this more ideal bit, but it's like, well, this will work. This is what I can
Well,
do.
and he just didn't have the tools to make it happen, like you were just saying.
Yeah.
Just like I didn't have the tools to write the songs I'm writing now, you know, s- even 2, 3 years ago, I don't think I could have written the songs that I'm currently working on, just because I wasn't where I needed to be. I hadn't read the books that I've read. I hadn't had the conversations that I'd had. I hadn't had the experiences that I've had. I haven't had the feelings and haven't lived, the way I have
So
to get to where I am now.
what how much do you think an opinion is logic and how much is do you think it is feeling? And for me, my opinion on that is I think it's so contextual. It
Right.
really depends on what that opinion and what I brought up, that initial toe in the water for whatever that opinion, what forms that opinion. um
Yeah. Well, I think it depends on who it's coming from,
okay, that's true.
because if someone doesn't like you or you don't like them, and you don't like that's going to translate into what they're doing, and that you might give or might receive a dishonest opinion, because it's coming from that place of emotion. Well, it's like, oh, well, I don't like this guy, so that song sucks,
Hmm.
that sort of thing. So I think
I
the
just
way you
like
rec-
I think the closer to the truth is usually the logical analytical bit, but that can often get in the way of the truth as well.
well, and it's tricky if this is another thing.
That instinct component to opinion that we've been kind of touching about is more on the emotional end of it.
Right, and if I'm creating something and it's coming from an emotional place, it's emotionally driven, I think opinions on that are going to be a little bit more difficult to process, and they're going to be a little bit more difficult to think rationally through, because if the art is coming from a place of emotion, generally that's where you're existing, at least for me, when I'm creating it. So outside influences, I can't help but filter them through that. Like when I was writing Chuck, it's an emotional album. It was an emotional experience that caused me to want to write it. So people's opinions about it when I was working on it and I was asking for feedback, I almost didn't really care because I was so caught up in the emotions of what I was doing, and I was just kind of I was going to do it how I wanted to do it no matter what anybody said. I almost just like almost did what I did when I was 16, where I just gave it to people and expected them to just like it. But what's different is that if they didn't, or if they had constructive criticism or negative feedback, I just said, "Oh, okay," and it didn't hurt my feelings, and I just knew in my head I wasn't going to change it. So I don't know if that's an answer.
Well, it kind of is. So, and I think so. And this is, it can be analyzed, and it's been talked about since we were doing, probably sand drawings and cave paintings. But art it is usually created to influence emotion, right? It certainly can be done for a logical expression, absolutely, and usually those, if they're done right, are extremely beautiful because it usually follows some sort of logical natural pattern. But at the same time, it's still trying to bring you to that place as well. It's trying to influence your emotions, whether you went into it uptight and it wanted to calm you, or the opposite, it wanted to make you uptight because you were calm, right? But so I think without the concept of an opinion, without that, art loses a significant amount of value, particularly as a shared experience. It basically loses it entirely. But from where
right.
you
Well,
were
art can't
creating,
exist in a vacuum.
exactly, and your opinion on it, your personal opinion on it, like you're talking about, that emotional construct, the thing that drove you to make that piece of art, and I had a very similar one with Jack Irons, is to you were creating for you.
Yeah,
At the end of
and
the
I
day,
always do. I always do.
I think that is the smartest way to create art, because no matter what, you have one fan.
Right.
uh,
Well, yeah, and if you're making crap that's selling and you're not happy with it, you
yep.
might as well be. I mean, I don't know, but that's just whatever. Do that if you want to, but for me, that just sounds terrible.
So
Wouldn't want to do that.
I found a lot of successful artists, and I use that in the monetary lives off of it sense, not so much
Right.
other very valid definitions as well. They do both. They do their corporate whatever, postcard drawings, that kind of stuff, and then
Sure.
they're doing their own little graphic novel, or they're doing whatever on the side
Right.
that's for
Well,
them.
that's that I see as kind of I have a day job,
Yes.
and I could I
Yes.
could I could do music for other people, and I've done commission work before, and that's fun.
Yeah.
I don't mind doing that. I enjoy that. It's actually a fun experience. But I don't think I would ever it's different when I'm writing my own music that's expressive. But I had a thought about what you were saying
Yeah.
about art is meant to influence.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that necessarily, because it's not my intent so much to influence when I create art. It's more to it's kind of like a conversation. If I have a thought I want you to understand,
Mm.
I'm going to try to express it in a way that I feel will resonate with you and will make I'm going to try to express it in the best way I can to where you will understand it.
Maybe you are misinterpreting how I used influence, because I find that
Maybe.
influence, like exactly what you said. That's
Well,
influence.
yeah, I see influences like you're trying to
I could use the word guide
invoke
as well.
change.
Well, you are. Any conversation is to me, right? Again, we're talking about the new reality. Talking
Fair
about
enough.
that
I
again.
guess I just see the
That's how
word
I meant it.
influence as a sort of a manipulative
That's what I
term.
mean. And so maybe guide is a little less aggressive. Trying to,
Yeah.
as you said, converse. That works just as well, because it
Yeah,
is
and
it is a
to
back and
express
forth.
and to get you to understand, because that's
Yes.
really what I enjoy about music is is how well you can use it to express emotions and
Yes.
thoughts that are difficult to they're just difficult to vocalize in other ways. If you can add a melody to it, you can influence the emotion of it, and you can kind of it's your tone of voice. You know
Yes.
what mode you choose to write the song in. That's the tone of voice. So, oh, do you feel sad about this? Oh, I guess this is a sad feeling you have about this song. This makes you sad. I'm not necessarily trying to make you sad, but I'm trying to get you to understand that this is a sad feeling for me. I feel sad about this.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. Um, it's hard to truly experience art and go for those resonances and not resonate. If you know what I mean. So you are being influenced, right? Like I know you're not trying to, like, you
Sure,
didn't go in
sure, but it's
making
not
it
my
that.
intent. It's not
Yeah.
my intent.
No, no, no. And I don't do that either.
My intent is to be understood.
But and for me it is usually to simply to say something. I don't even need anybody to really understand it. I just needed it out. I guess is the best way.
Yeah, I guess I don't need to be understood, but that's definitely a goal, is that I want people to understand what I'm saying in the song.
Oh yeah.
I want the message to be conveyed clearly, not so clearly, not blatantly, but to where it can be understood with enough subtlety and metaphor interwoven into it where you have to think like a good joke. The best jokes, you hear it and you go, "Oh, that's what I think a good song is, in my opinion, is one that you hear it and you have to think about it, and then you put it together and you go, "Oh." And I think that it rewards you because you had to use your brain, and you feel good about yourself because you thought about it, you understood it. Ah, what a great moment.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's a great uh, flavor of making art. And I'm saying that because I mean there's a ton of musicians that just like they make ridiculous shit, right? Like just the goofiest shit. And
Sure.
their point, like again, there wasn't really like there's not much of a message or anything there. It was just like this is fun. Um,
Yeah, I write songs like that, and it's
absolutely.
great. You should do that. Have fun. You know, it's like the popcorn movie. Some things
Yes.
just need to be there to entertain, and we need that.
Absolutely. And so there's so many ways, and I guess again it's I think what we've hit is kind of our goal with that initial, and I'm going to use that again, that toe dip into the water is to be a positive one in terms of
Yeah.
of being beneficial. I'm going to use that word. Being something worthy of their time, I guess is one way to
Yeah,
put it.
something of
There
substance.
you go. Yeah, exactly. And again, it could be a popcorn movie, can be of substance. My God,
Agreed.
making people forget something for a minute or two and just have fun, or just enjoy something for 2 3 minutes on a song, what have you.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing. Um, and same with phony books. My guy, there are so many, particularly cartoonists. They are genuinely amazing at that. They can do so many things with 2 panels, 3 panels, 4 panels, and that's
Right.
that's what they've
Yeah.
done.
That's a true art form.
And a lot of them, the ones I really enjoy, that's what they're doing. It's just like, oh, here's a quick turn, and they've mastered that very specific piece of sequential art of doing that. And
Right.
uh, um, a lot of people have different opinions on that, particularly with cartoonists and comic books. One of the big opinions that in Western media in particular, we've never gotten it over the they're for kids hump. Um,
Right. Which
when
is surprising.
it is so surprising when there's music never really had that. There's all these different art forms, but for some reason this is a funny book. um
Right.
Berserk is a funny book, but it's
Kind of
and
like animation.
oh, that's
And
the other one. Yep.
people think it's all it's a cartoon. It's for kids.
Yep. Yep, and that really is a Western way to look at it, and particularly an American way to look at it, because
True.
again, the
Yeah.
French and the English and quite a few others, 2000 AD, heavy metal, you have a lot of the French
Yeah.
publishers and stuff, like they had a whole market for that, and they never really treated it like for kids, because they knew, oh well, this has extreme gore, it's not for kids, and they never
Right.
like got strapped locked in the, oh well, this is a less, I don't know. It's one of the mediums, and it's one of the things that's sad, and it's changed, but particularly within itself, it doesn't have much respect. Again, in America, mangaka,
Well, that
and
seems to be
again,
changing from what
I
from what I
hope so.
understand.
I
Yeah.
truly hope so. Um,
I think the opinion is shifting.
yep, and particularly because it's become a people have been more and more exposed to it, and to be fair, the market for Marvel and DC for the last, basically since the 90s, since the particularly when Image left, the Image founders left, Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, all those folks, was and has been 30 to 50-year olds, because they have the money to collect. um,
That makes sense.
And so, and their current market, sometimes they shoot for very specific demographics, and there's always disagreements within that original cash cow that actually buys the books compared to who they actually are writing and trying to create for, and trying to integrate new audiences and all these different things, which I think is a good growing process. It's just handled very poorly very often. Um,
Right.
and anyway, the opinions on those books clash quite greatly. The opinion of the company on what they're marketing have changed, but it's just that the opinion on the medium itself still has that, just like animation still has that's what's the word, it's a brand, but there's a word for it, stigma. It still has that
Yeah.
stigma to it. But it certainly has changing as younger kids get into art and drawing, and figure out, oh, I can tell a story like this, and this is how I can express this most clearly, because it's a very unique medium. It can express things just like music in very specific ways that other mediums just don't do. um
Exactly. Yeah, and
and
that's why there's such a difficult translation when they try to make comic books into movies, is or
yes,
novels into movies. It's like
yes,
it can be
same thing.
done to a degree of success, but it's just they're not the same mediums.
No, not at all. And
And that medium was chosen sometimes because it was the only choice, but often it was chosen for a reason because of that medium's specific toolbox and the way
yes,
it could convey such a message.
its strengths and weaknesses, right?
Yeah,
And sometimes it's based on what, and we were talking, Paul Stanley, he adapted the
right.
God of Thunder line. Said that same idea is like, well, this is what I can do.
Yeah, all I got's a typewriter. I
Yes,
guess I'll write a book.
yes, and so that what was it? Necessity is the mother of invention. That kind of bit is
Yep.
like, well, this is all I can do. So boom, and that leads to, instead of invention, creativity, and that's where you get some of the best work. Um, but back to opinions. Um, I guess it hasn't come up yet. I kind of started it, but everybody has one. And I think that's part of their importance as well. Now, some people's opinions are so okay. Here's a bit we haven't done. What do you think about how easy the mob mentality can guide opinions? So that initial toe dip from one
What do I
person,
think about that?
yeah, just as an idea, and on art, and I just your maybe even your experiences with that, maybe as part of that mob looking at something, right? um
Well, it's a
how do you think useful?
problem.
Yeah, okay,
It's
okay.
a problem. It shows a lack of individuality, which is that's a big problem. Um,
Agreed.
and yeah, I've definitely gone into a movie having been told certain things about it, and it colors my opinion. Uh, and there have been times where, like, you, me, and a few other people have gone into a movie, and we all come out with
Yes.
varying opinions, and I'm so happy for that, and so thankful for that. And there are times when we all agree, and we're like, "This
Yeah.
is awesome. That was awesome." And but what I'm glad for is that we aren't all just agreeing on something for no reason, or we're not waiting for cues from the others. Oh, what'd you think? It was good. Oh yeah, I liked it too. Yeah, it's real good. I remember after we saw Multiverse of Madness, I was like the only detractor. I was the
Yes.
only one who didn't like it. And I remember a friend of mine walked up to me who had seen the movie also, but he wasn't with us. He goes, "Hey man, did you like the movie?" Not really. and he was like all stoked about it and happy about it. So I think I think the mob mentality it's a problem because people can get caught up in it easily. It's sometimes the path of least
Mm.
resistance, which is attractive to some, and it's difficult to be the one guy in the room who has a differing opinion. Uh, I would I would feel for somebody who hung out with our friend group who was like in love with The Last Jedi. I really would feel for them because they would be up against everybody else in the room. So I think it's important to stand to hold fast in your opinion. If you don't like something, you don't have to like it, you know? And don't let other people influence you. Don't let them sway you, you know? I mean, be open to changing your mind, but not for the sake of easement. That's that's remaining quiet in an argument because you don't want to enrage the other person. That's being ground down to nothing to avoid conflict. That's the difference between being open to an opinion or just agreeing so that you don't bear a wrath.
And I think these days in particular with and I mean this has been a thing again, the mob mentality of opinion, right? Has been a thing forever. As long as there's been
Oh
mass
yeah.
mass people together thinking one way or being guided one way, it's been a thing. But I think with the advent of the internet and all this massive connectivity and all of these you put it, the mirror, right? The all these
Yeah.
comparisons between each other and all these different levels of insecurity that are now forced upon us. That it is definitely becoming far easier to fall into that. It's one of my most, how do I want to call it? Frustrating. That's a good one. It's one of the most frustrating things about marketing my art in this environment is having to deal with the adjacent mob mentalities where that disingenuous opinion, because I know it's disingenuous because there's no actual nuance between all these different things being said or all these different people saying the same thing. um
Right.
and
It's
and
parroting.
and again, that disingenuous opinion is so frustrating just to be around on something that I personally don't have any investment in. But also,
Right.
when I do, and it's just like, well, why are you doing it this way? There's no value to it. But anyway, I think there's I just wanted to touch on the mob connection to opinions. I think that's just kind of an important angle to it.
Yeah, it's a problem. And going back to what you said, I about being disingenuous and I've met those people and it's just disturbing that these fake nice people that just pretend to be really sweet and nice and it's just all a facade and they say these really like I used to work with this person. When a customer would come in they would say, "Oh, hi handsome, hi, how are you?" And there's be this and then like I saw them do it with everybody.
Yeah, it's
And
marketing, but go on.
I was like, "Oh, okay. So that's like you don't really think that about this person. You just said the same thing to the next person. Like you're not real." And I get that there's some falsity in customer service, you know. I don't really I don't fault people that much for it, but it's kind of shocking to see it when it's like when you're going out of your way to kind of compliment and interact in in that way. It seems really disingenuous because it seems very specific. It's not, "Hey, how are you? How's is it a good day? Oh, nice. Yeah, it is sunny. Good weather."
Well,
You
you
know?
could go into that same thing and be more creative about it with your intent, right? Like, so your goal
Right.
is to elicit that same emotion, but maybe the guy had a nice hat instead of actually looking nice.
Yeah,
You
go
know?
specific. Go specific. Yeah, but see,
Exactly.
that's the thing. That just comes authentically.
Hmm.
I think if for for me when I if the guy's got a cool hat, I'll tell him. You know, if he's got a shirt that's it's a movie I like, I'll say something about it. I'll strike up a conversation about that. But I don't give people this general like fake nice thing. But that's maybe not the best example,
I've
but it's
met, I
disingenuous.
think,
You know,
I think, and so that's also an opinion. I think a lot of that tends to come from insecurity, and they had something work once, and so it's safe, right?
Oh yeah,
And
that makes
so
sense.
different people have different ways about that. And
Like, yeah,
you know,
it is a
I can.
defense mechanism. It's like cowering in front of the big wolf. It's like, hey, how's it go? Good to see you, Chief. You're still the leader of the pack.
Well, exactly, and you never know what brought a person to that point, right? And all these different angles of it. But I do
Right.
agree, it's not that health. It's not a healthy thing. It's not a like again, it's not a societal healthy thing
I would have
either.
a difficulty trusting that person
That's the bit, right? And
because I've
so,
seen them be disingenuous consistently. So I'd rather this guy, oh, he's a jerk to people when he feels like he needs to be, and he's nice to people sometimes. There's like some dynamism and some reality. That's what I like. And
well, and
those are the
that's where I
people I feel
find
like you can trust their opinions.
as you say, trust. That's where I find my security is in those kinds of folks, right? Is I can
Yeah, they
understand
tell like it is.
and that's the bit because and I use this as I use this term a lot as you know all the social games, but I've been trying to rephrase it as dances because I think that is more apt. It's just
We
when
were
it's
talking
negative,
about
it comes
that.
up. Yeah, exactly. And I have been trying to because I think it's quite important how you think about things, and particularly when you touch on an edge of truth, and you can change your. This is about an opinion. I thought it was one way, and now I'm kind of guiding myself to this other way because I found more honest resonance and truth with it, even though it has not been where I was stepping for a very long time in it. Because you know, trying to find that social, use this term, and don't get confused, that social security, that security within being social and within what a
Right.
narrative is and how you're
Well,
willing to honestly place yourself in those situations and what that box looks like and feels like. You need to find a way that's comfortable. And when I'm phrasing it as a game, because it often is because it's somebody's trying to win. Um,
yeah.
but if I'm phrasing it as a dance, if I'm going in as a dance and they're coming in as a game, it's likely still going to be a dance. Somebody's flowing and moving, right? Um, that's and I've noticed that I've been able to turn folks who I don't care for. This is particularly I experienced this very recently that I don't like the work ethic. I don't like a lot of these different angles of it, but to go from a place of conflict to one closer to cooperation and one that actually has a footing to step forward from instead of one that needs to be smashed and then there's a you got to pick up the pieces. um I think they're I think that's important and that comes from
I agree.
again I've brought this up a lot because I really like this quote. I brought it up earlier today with somebody who was kind of having trouble with another comic creator and all this other extra bit is again rigidity is the pathway to death, fluidity is the pathway to life, and that's Musashi again. It's the ability to flow, and if you can flow you will bend instead of breaking and you will still be you. You don't have to go through this other bit, you're just the bamboo in the wind, right? You're just kind of moving and then you're back to where you were after that. And I found that very useful in my own self because when I was younger, I was very rigid, very stubborn. This is where I need to be. This is how I understand things. And that's,
Right.
again, those initial toe dips and all these other experiences have changed my opinions and allowed me to grow. And again, I've become less rigid and I found that of great use. And it allows you
I think
to
that's just
help
a sign that you're
influence
on the right
others'
path.
opinions. Yeah, I think so too. And it allows you to do that. I can change somebody who was very abrupt and honestly rude into somebody who maybe isn't going to apologize, but they're not doing that anymore, right?
Hmm.
It's that bit of you know I emphasize maybe a really bad day, whatever. I don't know, I can't know, it's fine. My point is again to influence and make a new reality and allow that growth and give them the chance for that space to be found. Now, is it always going to be found? Probably not.
And is it going to be smooth?
Also, probably not. But if I don't allow my opinion to not to pigeonhole me into a thought. My initial reaction to pigeonhole me into like, oh, this is awful. That it's not just instinct, because there's the instinct and that doesn't go away. That's that little bit of truth. Like that's still there. But what tools do I have to work with to make this a beneficial situation? And so if I can guide opinion and change that, and so that the interaction's better, it might still not be where I need it to be or whatever, but it's survivable, then that's useful, and it influences their opinion in a way that, again, hopefully allows for better growth. It might not, but at least it made that
Well,
reality that I had experienced that was very negative into something different. And
right, and it comes down to just discussion. And
yes,
you and I are so fortunate that we went to the high school we did,
it's very true.
where they have made us participate in seminars
Yes, that
where
Socratic
we'd
method.
all read the same piece, and then we'd have a discussion about it. And I don't feel like we often agreed, but I don't remember it getting heated. I don't remember it getting weird. I just remember us sharing in disagreement and then walking away just the same way we'd walked in to class.
And so, I mean, it's important for adults to survive society, but to get teenagers to be able to do that and set them on that way of thinking is so important.
16-year-old cocky teenagers.
Exactly, they've got the world all figured out with a
They're
handful of
invincible.
years under them. Yeah, um, and so, and I totally agree. I think we were very fortunate. And I think it's called the Socratic method for a reason. It worked very well back when as well. That's why people would flock from all over the world to Greece to work with Socrates.
Yeah.
It's and his students and of course his teachers. Is because again, without words are one of our strongest and most powerful forms of magic, and I've tried very hard to refine it as I've gotten older, because it's so it's one of our least violent ways to affect change, if not the, but it's one of them. I mean, art is a beautiful one as well, and you could argue words, art, pictures, all of these different forms of expression are that.
The art of conversation.
All these forms of expression are that. Um, but that's the bit is as I've gotten older, growing that opinion again, being less rigid, being able to flow, being able to understand and bear, and also knowing not what I cannot and what needs to move forward. All those
Yeah.
different things.
Hmm.
It's a wonderful thing that needs to happen. I find a lot of people suffer when they're rigid in their opinions.
Yeah, I agree. And um yeah, I don't know. I think I don't really have much else to say on the subject.
We did.
I think we've had some good discussions
I
on this.
I agree. I had one more quote. I think we've kind of hit it. I'm gonna read it anyway. This is from Tim McGraw. I just grabbed quotes about opinion, and I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. So I didn't go by
Okay.
person. The one that's Thomas Jefferson, I was like, not only is this interesting, but it's somebody with some weight. But anyway,
Right.
everyone should have their own opinion and be able to voice it, no matter what it is. Of course, that does not mean your opinion is always right, but you're certainly entitled to your opinion. And we've kind of hit that as well. The fact of the matter is, and the Jefferson quote is that as well, when he was speaking more again of that fluidity, being able to find truth out of difference of opinion. McGraw's more like, well, you're allowed to have it, and I don't have to be fluid with mine. You're allowed to have it, and I
Right.
think that's the end of the day. I mean, that's the importance of free speech. That's the importance of a lot of free expression in general.
Oh, vital. Free speech
Is
is vital.
vital, absolutely. And opinion is probably one of the loudest forms of it, and that's great.
Right. Yeah, and that's what it's kind of what this country's founded on.
Yes, indeed. So yeah, let me see here real quick. If anybody has any questions for us before we close out, now's your chance to post it. Otherwise, we will kind of let you know who we are, what we do, and close on out this very cool discussion. You want to start with that?
Yeah, definitely. I'm Laguna Muta. I create original music. I've released 2 albums and 6 or so singles at this point. if you want to check those out, you can just follow me on Bandcamp, Laguna Munta at Bandcamp, and got some new stuff in the works, I should say.
Ooh.
And when it's released, that'll be on Bandcamp as well.
Oh, keep an eye out, folks. Again, all original indie rock and roll from the mountains of New Mexico. You won't find anything else out there like it. I'm Cody Fernandez with Ironverse Comics and To Walk with Giants. Ironverse Comics is a weird Western science fiction imprint, comic book imprint. We've been at it for a while. We've released a few books. They're free to read on ironversecomics.com if you want to check those out, share it around. If you find what we've done of value, the more eyes and engagement with it, the more the better I feel about it. No, honestly, we talked about I create to not be understood, but so much to I had something I needed to get out, and the more it's shared and the more it's out there, the more I find people can resonate with it. And so, yeah, check that on out, and we will catch you in 2 weeks again with a topic.
Yet to be decided.
Yet to be decided. But yeah, thank you folks so much.